This is a compilation of material I have spoken to and written about in the past, summarizing an intact version of ancient cubit rod measures. You can skip this video series. I've left links below to the PDF sub. Cubit Rod Composition, Part 1, Introduction. General topics, the thought process behind the cubit rod. In graduates, the standard length of a digit cubit would correspond in parallel with that of inches, yards, and millimeter meters because a cubit rod hierarchy consists of all these measures. More specifically, the millimeter, meter, yard, inch, and their fractions of in a radial display. SI units, millimeters, and the inch system was derived from and integral to a cubit rod. It is curious how mankind rescripted cubit structure through the ages. Ancient wisdom, as well as astronomy, divinities, the Egyptian and Mayan calendars, prophet forecasting, and most notably stonemason mathematics, held theorems absolutely true from one scale. In general, cubit scales are a theory of everything, a final theory in the description of nature. Ancient cubits once were a number unification theorem, with an explanation found in the progression of cubit rod ratio. 7, 28, 4 Egyptian, 4, 16, 4 Sumerian, 6, 24, 4 Biblical, 9, 36, 4 Babylonian, the last evolved cubit rod ratio from 539 BC. One can see an advancement in the incorporation of the circle-formed 36-unit rod of Babylon, with each of the 36 unit digits and 10-degree increments for radial 360-degree calculation. This is in parallel to ancient Egyptian astronomy having 36 groups of stars, small constellations. Every 10 days, a new constellation would have a heliacal rising. A total of 36 decans were observed and were presided over by a deity throughout the year. For thousands of years, the hour and the ancient calendars were calibrated to the degree. The last evolved cubit rod of Babylon simplified these radial mathematics from above, the heavens, to below, the earth, before it was removed from mankind's timeline. Mankind's inheritance is above. So, did the ancients have a mathematical unification theorem to all is number? The answer is yes. One unit of measure, cubits, produced a lot of divine societies and the plagiarized sacred geometry that drove them. More relevant, in the years after the fall of Egypt and Babylon, 525 to 539 BCE, the divine sect of Pythagoras in his endeavor. Pythagoras, instead of using root-length numbers as a basis, squared the right triangle from whole numbers up. Why recompose? Well, it is written that Cyrus, the conqueror of Egypt and Babylon, met with Pythagoras and would have executed Pythagoras if he kept cubits in the forefront. Cubits would have been viewed as a method of undermining Cyrus's rule, thus producing a secret society. The one and only thing that united the ancient world of Egypt and Babylonia was the philosophy of Thoth's cubits. All of Pythagorean's work, from right-angle theorem, musical universus, and Pythagoras' musical scale, was accomplished from one unit of rule, cubits, the math of the previous kings. It is only logical that Pythagoras studied with the Egyptian priest and the Babylonians for years with full knowledge of a cubit rod. Before furthering this article, I would like to answer the question, why was cubits of various lengths employed in many parts of the world in antiquity? This is because the length is broken down from a unit. A cubit could be assigned any standard length of measure. The standard unit only sets scale. For example, root 2 will always be the hypotenuse means of a square, and root 3 will always be the diagonal means of a cubit. And in other words, the square segment set to a unit is all that's needed to set these constants in motion. These constants have been here long before mankind. Mankind only sets the unit to define this reality. Cubit Rod Composition, Part 2. Cubits, SI units, and the noted relationship to the British inch. General topics, root table mechanics, inner workings of a cubit rod. So what is a cubit rod and how does it function? The utilization of a unit and a constant, or an opposite and an angle, as shown in the Rhine Papyrus, number 53. A cubit rod needs to employ two pieces of wireframe geometry to compute, as seen, segment and an angle. I'll further explain in a right angle example. By assigning the square segment into a tier of rod root lengths and its diagonal or angle length into a tier of digits, in this instance, the segment of the cube equals a root length and its hypotenuse is assigned to the digits of a unit. This is the bygone ingredient of allowing geometry to energize the rod. Why a root length increment? Respectfully, we are taught to associate roots to the unit number, where geometry and unit line length never align. The line-like root length gets smaller and smaller as it graduates. Units in this fashion are not used for measurements in geometry. Whereas equal root length increments square units and opens geometric volume and space. All digit rods are squaring rods. Tablets such as Pimpleton 322, 1800 BC would be the necessary steps to define and calibrate a new rod. Mathematical squaring tables are an easy understanding of the applied math and a good explanation. If you envision the entire column as line length, the vertical line shown next to the upper right table, and the rows as increments in that line, the sum or sums of the column are how root length measures increment or graduate geometrically in that line. These measures, like Pimpleton 322, would have been displayed and utilized in parallel on a cubit rod. Let's glance at some unearthed rods of the past. The tiers are labeled for this assessment. Herein, digits will be shown in a combined outgrowth communication with root length in a square segment to hypotenuse relationship, or more so, Pythagorean root 2, squared mechanics as depicted in picture 2. This methodology is shown and applied into the modernized 36-digit rod of Babylonia, the last one of the three rods displayed. The standard unit will be portrayed inside of the inch to get a broader grasp of cubit scaling in a mathematical perspective. The following applied terminology is explaining the rod's build one tier at a time. Digit subdivisions, a mediator between root lengths and an inch unit that subdivides into two cubits. Cubits, 0.5 graduations of the set unit in radiant workflow, where one turn equals 2 cubits. Same mindset as radians. Fractions, as well as decimals and the inch, are respectively graduations of the 2-cubit set unit. Fractions by simple means are ratioed by palms in 4 subunits. The denominator is the mechanism from which the cubit and digit ratio is sized. Decimals derived in the set unit. Inch bounds the unit to a set amount of digits. Root length. Root length integration allows right-angle theorem to calculate an exercise in synchronicity to the unit scale. In a further conception of root length integration, still in view of the last rod depicted in picture 6, the hierarchy of a cubit rod utilizes root lengths calibrated with digits. In this example, in using Pythagoras root 2 as increments, a rod deployment unit of root 2 at 36 increments as shown would equal 25.4558, which is root 648 length. Keep in mind modern calculators round up. 36 increments equals 1 unit inch, 9/9, or incrementally by a 36, viewed as 36 increments equaling 1 yard. In picture 7, the concept is shown outside the inch. Note, its scaling at 2 cubits equals a 1-inch unit. Pythagorean and Euclid math is commonly spoken in 2 dimensions, where this type of dimensional root length integration also calculates respective mass properties utilizing root measures and the right angle third leg in partnership. And since units only set scale, to remove the restraints and zero out a magnitude of geometric actions in ancient engineering, if you took the standard inch unit block and added 0.00219 inch to the inch block, or 2/1000ths of an inch, the millimeter would then calibrate to 25.455, which is root 648, root 2 at 36 increments in a 1-inch unit. This would unite the homogenized mechanics of the modern yard, the millimeter, the inch, the rationale of the Babylonian cubit rod, radial degrees, and right-angle theorem in ancient sacred geometry, as it was practiced. It is really that simple. In the ongoing example of the modernized Babylonian digit rod, the root 2 hypotenuse now becomes a gateway to the square, or in general terms, opposite to adjacent, the hypotenuse into a diameter, into platonic solids, in an outreach of natural educations of right-angle theorem across geometries. Just by assigning the unit to a square segment and a constant to an angle, all mass property and vertexes are well-known ingredients bound in a unit with the numbers in a geometric locking pattern. The area and volumes in unison, harmonically exercised together in a Pythagorean arithmetic. This mannerism is at the core of ancient mysticism, geometry figured from known geometry. In a further view of the Babylonian rod and how its tiers are rationalized, and to access arithmetic value, we will separately apply these equations to picture 6, the last rod depicted. This is how you gauge the merit of the rod and its numeric woven abilities. Periodic conversions, examples and calculations from digit 27. Root length times root 2 equals digit. That is, 19.091 times root 2 equals 27. Digit divided by 4 equals the numerator. 27 divided by 4 equals 6.75. Digit divided by 36 equals the inch. 27 divided by 36 equals 0.75. Digit times numerator times 2 equals root length squared. 27 times 6.75 times 2 equals 364.5. Fractional numerator times root 8 equals root length. 6.75 times root 8 equals 19.091. Inch times 9, the fractional denominator, equals the numerator. 0.75 times 9 times 27 equals 6.75. Digit times 9, the denominator, times cubit equals root length squared. 27 times 9 times 1.5 equals 364.5. Digit divided by 2 times digit equals root length squared. 27 divided by 2 equals 13.75 times 27 equals 364.5. Inch times root 648 equals root length. 0.75 times root 648 equals 19.091. Cubit divided by 2 equals the inch. 1.5 divided by 2 equals 0.75. Cubit times 18 equals a digit. 1.5 times 18 equals 27. Cubit times 180 equals degree. 1.5 times 180 equals 270 degrees. And always, decimal times 2 equals the cubit. In absolute respect to the ancients, the above example equations were to display the magnitude of geometry-driven numerology. Since I mentioned Euclid, I'll give you a quick example of rod deployment. The first square segment is dimensional to the Babylonian rod depicted earlier, 36 digits, root 648 length at 9/9. The set unit or multiples of become Pythagoras on steroids when stretching rope from vertex to vertex. As shown, the dimensions are displayed in exact digit measures, rationalized. Also, area and the volume of the cube become Pythagorean volume squaring actions, the prescript result shown in the upper right-hand corner. Cubit Rod Composition, Part 3, Fractions. General topics, the constructive palms. As you may have noted in the Babylonian rod and the Euclid depiction, fractions on a cubit rod are ordered differently, such as 9/9, 16/9, 25/9. This enables the numerator and the denominator to calculate separately within the rod hierarchy. As demonstrated earlier in the periodic conversion equations, the denominator and numerator were calculated separately, this being the significance of Egyptian fractions. By calculating fractions in this manner, it doubles the computing power of ancient fractions. In adding to an article written from Dr. David I.N. Lightenbody on the Edinburgh stone, and to appropriately highlight fractional intent, the accompanying royal scale will provide insight, taking the opportunity to reorder the hierarchy to the respective scale. Egyptian. Dr. Lightbody's discovery, May 7, 2013. I'll leave a link below. Pyramid Khufu's Seeked, the surface inclination of a triangled pyramid. In terms of a right angle, 1 unit opposite altitude to 5.5 adjacent. This would be in agreement with the fractional numerator of the Egyptian palm in digit relationship. 4 digits to a palm is 1/7, and 5.5/7 of a palm is at 22 digits. With the Royal Egyptian Cubit Rod set unit applied to the Pyramid of Khufu, 280 cubits opposite altitude, or 28 digits, 1 unit rod, multiplied by the factor of 10, 5.5/7 of the unit adjacent, equals a constant pi. A description of nature, as earlier mentioned, also seen in the pinwheel Milky Way and the arrangement of body parts. Unit to a constant relationship, phi. One thing the ancients strongly emphasized was a unit to constant relationship. Therefore, Khufu's sums are a result of the same shown root mechanics, constant, and cubits, whole number units, being calculated by right-angle geometry governed in the set unit. We tend to view right-angle theorem in whole number format, overlooking the natural function of a fraction and the ability to communicate in the same manner. The primal design of a palm constructed by 4 instances is primarily in association to picture 14. Then, why sevenths in an Egyptian rod? When adding, your answers will always be in some sequence of 0.142857, as sevenths do. This arrangement lets you know the correct adding procedure, but more so, in the scale of things, Cubit Rod graduations. Sevenths in 28 digits, lunar, eighths in 32 digits, ninths in 36 digits, solar, tenths in 40 digits, or Mayan, fifths in 20 digits. These are the Cubit Rod ratios of the ancient architects of the past. Cubit Rod Composition, Part 4, Radial. General topics: circle length to line weight, root 2 associated to arc length in the radial degree, a radial explanation of root length measures around the radian. Shown in picture 15 is the dimensions of the unit circle. The arc length of this unit circle is numerically equal to the measurement of root 2 pi times pi, the sum 4.4428 inner square segments diameter formed. The segments are realized in the lower left-hand corner of picture 16. The smaller diameter, as illustrated, is a redefined radian under the same shown leadership of geometry, the Pythagorean root 2 square. Instead of radii segments being used to determine arc length, S equals r theta, square segments are used as arc length communication and accordingly become web calibrations within the rod. In the larger diameter shown, the root 2 rod is sized around the diameter by a circle form means of 36 digits multiplied by 10 graduated into 360 degrees. Where 1 cubit equates to 18 digits on the rod, multiplied by 10 equals 180 degrees placement on the diameter. Respectively, 2 cubits equate to 36 digits on a rod, multiplied by 10 equals 360 degrees placement on the diameter. And in other words, the former 2 pi radians become 2 cubit in 1 rotation placement. Before moving on, in order to provide a mental representation of the unit circle in view of the ability to form a circle using a rod, let's unpack the cubit fractions displayed around the diameter. Since 1 cubit is at 180 degrees, or 180 degrees divided by 10, 18 digits locational on the rod, in essence, a half a rod and or turn. Respectively, 3 cubits would equal a rod and a half, or turn and a half at 54 digits, or 540 degrees. To forecast the 270 degree fraction 3 over 2, located at the bottom of the larger diameter, 3 the numerator and digit means, multiplied by 180 equals 540 degrees. Divide by 2 the denominator and the cubit means, equals 270 degrees. On the far mid-right of the illustration are numbered symbols in the column. These are the cubits and fractions of turns displayed around the larger diameter. The symbol pi is associated from a radius to a pi radian. Therefore, I created a new symbol in order to distinguish a square segment to radial means. The numbers in the first column correspond to cubits. The new symbol assigned, as mentioned, represents the square cube means to pi arc length shown in the equations located under 2 arc length column. The equations and where these numbers are integrated into the rod is the geometric framework of our ancestors. To explain, perpendicular in the 2 new symbol cubit row, the intercoincident square segment is multiplied by the root of 2 times pi times pi, the sum 4.4428 equaling arc length of the unit diameter at 1 revolution. Accordingly, at 3 cubits, segment multiplied by the root of 4.5 times pi, the sum being 6.6643 is the arc length at 1.5 turns. divided by the fractional denominator 2 of the 3/2 bottom diameter is displayed fraction equaling the arc length of 1 unit diameter at 270 degrees, 3.33215. What is meant by the segment is multiplied in the first operation of the equation or equation shown. The segment size is the diameter, or in other words, the diameter's line itself is also the hypotenuse of the intercoincident square, so the diameter divided by root 2 is naturally the segment size. Root 2 is a communicator between the rod and diameter. These numbers were generated by the digit rod in the root length square tier of the rod. Note, located at digit 2, the first number in the times pi operation. Located at digit 3, the squared root of 4.5, and so on. Digits and cubits share the same common means, being that the rod is an evolved sequence of numbers populated by the dimensions of the square segment. The hypotenuse is interchanging and inhabited in the digit and root length increments. The root 2 table increments shown earlier are the chosen geometry that derives the measures, quite opposite of the measures today. The modern unit fully defines geometry, while ancient geometry fully defined the cubit. Lastly, the angle made when one square segment is wrapped around a unit circumference is 81.028 degrees. That is, 360 degrees divided by pi divided by root 2. Or, for a full mathematical grasp, 360 degrees divided by the root of 2 pi times pi equals 81.028 degrees. Divided by root 2 equals 57.2957 radian. To convert from degrees into arc length, circular degree divided by 81.028 degrees times segment, same segment means as mentioned earlier. For an example, 360 degrees divided by 81.028 degrees equals 4.4428 arc length of the unit circle. Also applicable, degree divided by 10 times pi divided by the root of 648, which is a unit rod length. Example, 360 degrees divided by 10 equals 36 times pi equals 36 pi divided by the root of 648 equals 4.4428. The architect's set unit controls all measures. To push it a step further, take a look at the square segment unit circle allocated to weight, wherein the geometry drives the inch to metric conversion. The pound equal to the arc length at 1 cubit rotation, and 1 unit segment equal to 1 kilogram. To take that a step further, you can add another tier of root 3 lengths, which would be considered as a square segment to the diagonal of the intercoincident cube to a sphere diameter. This is the insight into the 1-1 and 2-3 Pythagorean musical scale, wherein root 432 and root 648 in hertz are housed, mass and harmonics being one and the same. Basically, 3 and 4 in a carpenter sense of squaring a right angle. Based on the simplest Pythagorean triple, with the side lengths being 3, 4, and 5 units. Notably, unearthed ancient musical instruments from Egypt and Greece were predominantly tuned to 432 hertz. The hertz are already set in motion due to the fact that the scale is already assigned in Galileo's theory of acceleration. And finally, to put rod calibrations into perspective, in this unit diameter, any of these segments and their respective angles could be set as rod functionality, dependent on your desired path of discipline. As the example shown, the triangle segment wrapped around a diameter would equal 3.6275 circle-formed segments under a whole new leadership of radial navigation. Cubit ratios are infinite in choice and are in complete communication with each other through geometric matrix reasoning. Cubit Rod Composition, Part 5, Sacred. General Topics, Solomon's Lesser Keys, merging the ancient world with the modern. In the Lesser Keys of Solomon, the 72 demons, according to the text, are described as being commanded by 4 kings of the cardinal directions: Ammon east, Khorasan west, Ziminar north, and Gape south. The ancient text of Ars Paulina is in turn divided into 2 books. The first detailing 24 angels aligned with the 24 hours of the day. The second derived more from the Hippotameron, detailing the 36 spirits of the degrees of the celestial bodies. In both of these cases, these are applied entities to cubit structure. In rereading this as math, it's rod functionality. 36 spirits of the degrees of the celestial bodies equals 36 increments multiplied by 10-degree divisions of deacons at 30 degrees longitude. 24 angels aligned with the 24 hours of the day, the second equals 1,440 minutes. Divide by 24 segments equals 60 sections. 72 demons equals digits. 4 kings, cubits. 2 books, a rod above and a rod below. 2 rods raise vertical, squaring actions. The components of the Mayan and Egyptian calendars. The Mayan long count calendar is based on 20 Katun cycles of 144,000 days each. The Egyptian calendar is constructed from Egyptian astronomy consisting of a 36-decan year. One decan is defined by 10-degree rotation in the zodiac lasting for a period of 10 days. A 1-year rotation divided into 36 decan digits with 1 and 2 cubit placement at the solstices. This, in an extension of the royal 28-digit Egyptian unit rod, 28-day lunar cycle, of basically adding an additional 2 palms or 8 digits to arrive at the evolved 36-digit Babylonian unit rod, the ancient 360-degree solar cycle. Or more so, the practiced Egyptian conversion of scales between the eyes of Horus. The Egyptian measures were calibrated to the lunar cycle. In predicting planetary shifts in the moon cycle, the Egyptians were the masters of the effects at tide, a crucial control for the Nile. In predicting the solar cycle, the philosophy of mathematical cubits were well preserved in Egyptian sun temples, with the results still in practice today. The ancient Egyptians used the shadows of the sun temples' giant stone of bliss cast on the ground to tell time divided into a day into sections of 10, rod, and 12-hour standardizations of cubit measures. In modern time, in view of the illustration, 3 increments palm per hour equals 60 subdivisions of times 24 hours equaling 1,440 minutes in a day. These were exclusively the ancient solving properties of cubits and degrees. In furthering this description, in the illustration, each of the 72 increments and 20 subdivisions equals a sum of 1,440 subdivisions overall. In wielding set measures, 1/20th of a subdivision set at root phi length, with 2 subdivisions equaling a phi length. Circumferences and increments result cleanly. This in the ancient utilization of 2 pieces of geometry to custom time constants and units. Where else have the masters left this knowledge? Rod unit measures in 72 increments, corresponding with the equinox, or the 72 disciplines of Confucius. After his temptation in the desert, Jesus is served by 12 superior angels and 72 angels. 72 is the number of immortals Taoism. The Chinese astrology has 36 beneficial stars and 72 malevolent stars. Centaur, Persian, has 72 chords. The 72 divine names in one of the Jewish systems said to be used in the codes of creation. The 70 ancients accompanying Moses that received an outpouring of the Spirit, plus the 2 absent. In Chaodia, the number of planets between heaven and hell. Thoth of Egyptian mythology wins a 72nd of each day of the year from the moon in the game of draughts. In closing, in clarifying the endless different incremental rods of different arrangements from around the world, these rods are not ceremonial by any means. They are the architect's hierarchic thought process of computing his rod. Since individuals and societies apply math differently, each architect's rod would utilize different routes to the sum. In short, the architect's rod is his identity of using a hierarchy to reach a sum. An individual's natural process might read and rearrange the path of the hierarchy to accommodate preferences and performances of working geometry. Keep in mind, during Solomon's time, there were 3 different cubits applied: a land cubit for plotting, a building cubit for construction, and a gold cubit for decorative works, such as silver vessels, all relating to each other, composed for different purposes, and all consisting of a constant and cubit agreement. As this article presents, cubits as an ancient philosophy are profoundly simple enough to define any desired outcome. As mentioned, just by adding unit length and mankind's unit will encompass the more accurate based results seen by our ancients. To leave the reader with a final thought, all of the 7 wonders were designed and constructed from cubits. Imagine all the other potential world wonders that were diminished into mere ideas instead of constructional realities due to the absence of qubits from society. More modernly, the input scales of global warming models.